Despite what it looks like from the thumbnail, there's actually a lot more than just two types of Linux users. In reality, it's more like a spectrum, kind of like how JavaScript compiles to TypeScript or binary. So here's a pie chart to help you understand what the distribution is. Just kidding, of course, it's a histogram. You can see that the extremes come on the small tails of the histogram. And that's what we're interested in. We want the juicy 0.01 p-values. No one wants to hear about the middle road, but the point is that most people will fall somewhere in between in this continuum. Starting on the left side of the spectrum, where most people tend to have the most tendencies these days, we have people who are serially addicted to ricing and aesthetics and new hype things that are written in Rust or Zig. They consume a lot of YouTube or Reddit content as their primary form of Linux knowledge, so it's not that deep, it's just copying configuration. They'll get very mad if you tell them this though, and they'll claim to read the manual, even if it's just to check like a flag once in a while. They don't really read the manual that closely. They use stuff like new shell or Nix Home Manager, and even though they've only curled one JSON URL and piped it through a single new shell feature, they think they're a workflow god data scientist. And even though they'll switch computers once every 7 years, they claim that Nix is the biggest productivity gain there can be had on Linux. They'll try to trash on frameworks like Ruby on Rails or Flask despite never having a real software job at all. And they're the type of people that'll bring up things like Golang or HTMX in casual conversation to people who use normal operating systems. They have a crazy Starship prompt and have no idea how to replicate the same behavior in Z Shell or Bash, even though it's like 2 lines. This is also the type of person that will use something like Eza as an alternative to LS or Zoxide as an alternative to CD. They have no idea how to pipe commands together other than things like echo and cat. They're the type of person that has heard of but has no idea how to use sed, xargs, awk, or anything like that uses regex or some kind of stream editing. They like the idea of scripts and macros, but only have ones that they've copied from Tmux's pop-up window repositories. A lot of people will have many tendencies of this. I know I did. I'm not just being condescending. This was me for a long time. And it really sucks. Like, I started to realize I'm a lot more of a normie than I thought, and I had no spine. Like, I was too intimidated to do the hard work to learn the deeper workflow stuff. So on the complete other end of the spectrum, you get people that are basically the inverse of this, which might sound great, but no, it has its downsides too. This is where you get people that are grizzled Linux veterans. They have a highly effective workflow, but they've never heard of a lot of the newer tools, and they never go on YouTube or Reddit pretty much. They will go hugely out of their way, write their own compilers and stuff like that, just to get around a problem that's been solved like 5 years ago by someone else. They know the GNU core utils and all their computer's utilities like the back of their hand. They could do basically anything. They pretty much have the man pages memorized. But the problem is they usually have some kind of real world problems, like they're racist or have schizophrenia or smoke a lot, or they're in general just not doing well in life. This is where you get people on the older side of the spectrum, but they are workflow beasts, so maybe it's kind of worth it. Sometimes they'll go on the Arch forums to grumble at people, but most of the time they're running something like Gentoo or Debian. They're also usually pretty depressed. Unlike someone on the far left side of the spectrum who uses Tor kind of ironically and knows how to get to the darknet and maybe watches a little Mental Outlaw, the people on the far right side of the spectrum are usually darknet vendors or somehow heavily involved in the business of the darknet. They'll use Monero or Bitcoin as their primary currency, unironically. This type of person spends huge amounts of time offline, and they have one of the ugliest setups possible. They'll be using like an ancient ThinkPad most likely, or some other computer that's pretty much obsolete by modern standards, but somehow has the performance of a supercomputer. The spectrum is broad, and you want to be dipping in the good sides of both ends. There are great new utilities coming out. I'm not saying that all Rust utilities are terrible and that you should stick to the core traditional values, but you also shouldn't be a spineless trend hopper who barely understands any of your software and just installs the next thing with the primary convenient command. But you also shouldn't be like an isolated hermit who stays inside, never talks to anyone, memorizes the entire man pages, has scripts for everything. it should be like a nice balance. And also, obviously, you don't want to be racist or somehow seriously mentally ill. So, yeah, try to be somewhere in the middle, towards the side of understanding things more, but keep an eye on the new stuff too, because there are great new technologies coming out. Also, it's important to not be offended by anything like this or have strong opinions about software, because it's all like imaginary if you think about it. And who really cares beyond normies who don't program really don't care, and even programmers, the good ones, don't care either. I would rather be writing archaic Java web framework code than potato farming. I don't know about you, but that's my 2 cents on it. See you next time.